you give us any maybe injury updates on those guys?
Yeah, Andy Rose, it's a meniscus injury, so he's having surgery today. So then we'll see how the recovery line goes. 4 to 6, 3 to 5. I don't know, a lot depends on the individual. Dylan Remick has got a little bit of an adductor pull. He's usually pretty quick with his recoveries, but probably out for this weekend for sure. He's thinking he can be back in 2 weeks. They're saying 4. So we'll see what happens there. And then Tristan Bowen still has concussion-like symptoms, and so he's still going through that protocol. So those were the 3 guys.
Do you have any better sense of Jimmy's health?
He's just starting into the real functional part of his rehab right now. I think he did some walking, running yesterday, and we'll continue to build on that. So, but it's still, it won't be before the break. Yeah.
Is there any months after that, or are you expected not to be that kind of thing? I mean, not season ending.
No. It's not season ending. It's one of those things we expect 4 to 6 weeks as well.
Is there any different challenge to getting a team ready for a game when they know they kind of have a break coming right afterwards, and just making sure their focus is right?
Yeah, you want to make sure they're focused on the last game, that they're not thinking about where they're going or what their plans are. I mean, that's something that's there. We also have certain things that we want them to maintain, even though they're on break. We still need to do some things with them. They don't need to play a 90-minute soccer game, but they still need to do a little bit of running and fitness because we are, somewhat in the middle of our season. And so you want to make sure that they're focused on the game. You get all that stuff out of the way early. So Dave Tenney's meeting with most of the guys today, making sure that they're aware of what their plan is after that. And I think we're motivated enough to find our focus.
What about coming off such a big win last week, and dominating performance like that, keeping kind of, when you're up high, not falling down from that, I guess?
Well, I mean, it's always, it's easier to get there than to stay there, and that was one of the things we talked about before the game, that we were up there, so we wanted to stay there. So now, staying there means you got to maintain your performance. You got to reward yourself, with good decisions, not punish yourself by making bad plays or bad mistakes at key times. And we definitely want to go into the break with a full lead, as maximum points as we can. And we've been a good road team. I don't know exactly what our record is on the road. I don't memorize all that stuff, but I think we've only lost once on the road this year. And so if we can continue to do that, if we can get a win there in Chicago, great. Chicago has a game on Wednesday. We need to take advantage of that. And although we've got some banged up bodies, but we want to maximize our points before we go on the World Cup break.
How does the schedule play out with a game on Saturday, and then you obviously have the Open Cup game on the 18th? So you take like 4 days off, you take a week off?
We're given the team off from the 8th until the 13th. We'll come back and we'll start training on the 14th. So that gives us 4 training days prior to the Open Cup game. But there's going to be a little bit. Some players are going to have a little bit of a different time period. Jimmy Traore is going to get a little bit of time already beginning this weekend. Some of the guys will take a few more days. We're going to give Oba a few more days. So there's some guys we're not planning on using in that first Open Cup game. And for the guys who've played a lot of minutes, and maybe some of the older players, I've talked to most of them, and some have chosen to take a few more days. Others just want to come back and train.
You touched
to give the team more if it hadn't been for the Open Cup falling in.
Yeah, if we would have played on the 11th, if we would have played on the 11th, the Open Cup game, then we would have had until the 24th, which is 13 days. So we could have brought them in 4 days before that. Now with it being the 7th to the 18th, it's only 11 days. So there's 2 days less that we could give them. If we would have had the Open Cup game on the 11th, we could have given them 2 more days.
You touched on it a little bit already, but is there just added importance on getting a result for this last match before you go on such a long break?
The added importance, I don't know if it's added importance, it's just our demeanor and the importance we place on it ourselves, and we're having a good season. We want to make sure we continue to do well, and we've been in the position before where we've led the league in points, and we've got to make sure that we maintain that now. We don't want to have any setbacks. So the only pressure is ourselves, but that's a good pressure.
Chicago is sitting there with the 7 draws. Is that a fluke statistic, or do certain teams play to a way that ends up that way?
Well, they battle and they compete. Frank Yallop's teams always battle and compete. Players like to play for him, and he gets his team to press in certain parts of the field. And as I said, they're a competitive group. But them and I think Portland's up there in draws and so forth. And they've been up there in draws for 2 years. So they're a competitive group that battles, and it's tough to beat them sometimes, but sometimes it's tough for them to beat you. And I think that's the way it is with Chicago right now. Right now it's tough to beat them because they do battle and compete, but it's also tough for them to beat you because sometimes they're not making use of their chances. So for us, we don't look at those stats that way, but we just have to go in and play our game.
You mentioned the challenge of staying on top and how you guys have been there. Is there something you can take from last year, the end of the season, or is it different time of year, different personnel, really not a lot that applies to now?
Last year, was a whole different thing, and I try not to think back upon that. But obviously there were injuries involved, and it just became a little bit dysfunctional at the end of the year, just from the standpoint of a lot of times we were training with a group on Thursday thinking this would be the lineup on Saturday, and then the lineup ended up being different because of injuries and different things, and then it seemed like nothing was turning our way at the end. But when you look at the history of this club, now since we've been in existence, and I've been here from that, if you look over that period of time, so I don't know, what are we now, 5.5 years?
Yeah.
Okay, so 5.5 years. If you look at half years as a segment, okay, that gives you 11 segments, and we've had one bad segment, one bad half year, and that's less than 10% of the time. So I'd rather think of us as that group that plays together 90% of the time, and not that 10%.
Did this feel like a defensive breakthrough this week in terms of, I know you had the shutout a couple weeks ago against San Jose, but that was a pretty depleted team. This is at least a dangerous team still.
Well, anytime you get a shutout, it's good for your team. It's something that we want to do. We want to cut down on our goals against. When you look at our goals against numbers now and compare it to the rest of the league, it's not that far out of whack anymore. And as other teams catch up in games as well, it gets closer, and there's teams that have given up more goals than us. But we always want to play to zero. It's 11 players that defend. I thought we did a really good job. Chad Barrett at times in the first half especially, and Marco Papa did a good job coming back and helping us defend, and Barrett putting pressure on their center backs, and we got to continue to do that.
How needed was the shutout for Stefan Fry, who's had kind of some lapse in judgment, some silly mistakes?
It's always a good feeling. Just like the team wants a win, that always gives you a great feeling, and a win's a win, whether it's 4-0 or 4-1. But I think when you've maybe had people start to question you, getting that shutout then becomes very important, and I think it helps. All of those little things help. That help his confidence, helps the confidence of our defense, helps the confidence of our team.
What did you make of Clint and DeAndre and the USA performance Sunday?
I thought Clint played well. I thought he was very good in the first 45 minutes. He gives, I think, the U.S. team a creativity that without him on the field is not necessarily present, especially in that position. I don't know what Jurgen's plans are if Clint can't play. Because Wondolowski's a different type of forward, Johansson's a different type of forward, and Clint's, I think, through his time here especially as well, where he's played more as a out-and-out forward than he did maybe at Fulham. I think that's helped him. So I thought he looked sharp. I thought DeAndre, after he got rid of that first pass, I think after that it was pretty good. And he's still learning. He's still growing. His eyes are open. Once he gets into Brazil, it'll be a whole different feeling. They're staying in Sao Paulo. I don't know if they're actually living at the training complex or in a hotel in Sao Paulo, so they're going to feel the ambiance a little bit of the World Cup, and that's just, you don't, unless you're there, you really don't know how big an event it is. It's, no offense to Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl, but it's the Super Bowl times 10, and, it's just a whole different feeling.
Papa's going back to Chicago, playing pretty well right now. For him, is it just kind of getting back into game shape and getting that rhythm from where he was early in the season?
Yeah, I think getting his rhythm and getting his confidence back, was very important. So, it's good for him to be returning home. Annie Baba's coming back to Chicago to play as well. So I'm happy for both those guys. And, that gives us a little extra motivation, too, to put on a good performance so they can hold their heads high.
The last time you guys were in Chicago, Brad and Marco kind of got into a little bit of a tete-a-tete or a little fight at the end of the game. Was that something that you had something that was on your mind when you brought him in, and it seems like they put it behind them very easily and they kind of laughed about it, but was that
Brad and,
Marco
Papa? Oh, in Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean things like that happen. You compete in the game, and I know I always tell stories, so you guys, but one of my best friends, was a guy that I played against. I played against him, and he wasn't a friend of mine at the time. We just kicked the crap out of each other for 90 minutes, and after the game we started talking to each other, and then I convinced him to change to our team the next year. So he played for our team, and we became very good friends, but it started by us kicking the crap out of each other. So sometimes that can be a start of a great friendship.
You still friends today?
We're still friends today. The only thing is he's coaching in RSL's academy, but outside of that, we're still friends.
Before World Cup group play starts, prediction. Who's going to be in the final? Who's winning?
Oh, I haven't thought it all the way through yet. Obviously, it's a great opportunity for Brazil. I'm a little concerned for Germany because Germany, with the little aches and injuries between Lahm and Neuer and Schweinsteiger and Klose, all those guys are carrying little aches and pains. Plus, if Klose can't play, then they really don't have a center forward. Then it's really Marco Reus or it's Goetze, so they're playing with, as they call, the false number 9. So I think it might be a little more difficult for Germany, although they always find a way usually. But Brazil being at home when the crowd gets behind them, I think could do well. The two surprise teams for me could be Japan and Belgium. I think are the two that could surprise. Japan, because they're going to have a huge following in Brazil. There's a lot of Japanese in Sao Paulo and Rio, so they're going to have a good following, and they're technically a pretty good team. And Belgium just has a great young team. They might be a shade too young, but they're all sort of together, from Hazard and Vincent Kompany and Witsel and some of the players that they have, Courtois in goal. I mean, they've got a really, really strong young nucleus. So, and the other team that you don't know is Argentina, because this is Messi's either going to make this his World Cup, or he's always going to be considered a little bit of a disappointment, on the world stage. And he was always accused of playing well for Barcelona and poorly for Argentina. So maybe this is the year that he doesn't play so well for Barcelona and plays great for Argentina. So I don't know if that's predictions.
I'll touch back with you.
Okay, check with that.
Stage, yeah.
Go through that transcript and let me know who I predicted.
Okay.
So I'll know that.
Zach Scott pairing with Chad Marshall. Can you just talk about what the duo that you have back there has done for the back line?
Well, they've done all right. Obviously they've done well. Chad's been so consistent for us all season. He's been great, and I think Zach's ability in the air, and he's made good decisions, and I think he's kept his game simple. I think at the end of last year, Zach wants to win so bad that he tried maybe a little too hard and put himself into positions that are not his best defensive positions. But right now, I think he's playing within himself. He's winning the duels he should be winning. He's playing fairly simple, and he's always, he always gives us good character and good communication on the field.
He wasn't in the lineup for those first 8-9 games. What did you see that made him kind of fit for these last 4 or 5?
Well, I thought early on, and Zach and me talked, I just thought he had trained a lot, and he seemed at times a little bit overtrained. He seemed a little stale to me, and I wanted the freshness to get back into him. And I think even prior to him getting into the lineup, the 2-3 weeks prior to that, you could see a step up in training, and he did well. And when we decided to make the change the first time in the San Jose game, we felt it was a good matchup because they come with big forwards and they lump the ball forward, and he's parlayed that and obviously Jimmy's injury came in there, but he's parlayed that into a couple of really strong performances.
Thanks, Coach.
Sigi.